Hi everybody, this is Tavi bringing you part 1 of my FE12 Maniac mode 100% growth LTC. This run will be full recruitment, classic mode, and will use all the unlockables, mixed male reclass, lunatic stat boosters, and the DLC rainbow potion, growth drop, and bond drop, though house everyone and the online shop are banned. It will also use combat rigging through RNG hacking. We start off by creating our avatar, who we will optimize for the sake of the lowest turn counts in the prologue. On this difficulty, Mercenary is the optimal choice. We go for +2 strength and +1 skill and speed, and the 30% HP growth boost, which permits +2 HP level ups during the prologue. The prologue maps of FE12 are all route maps. Prologue-1 has just Chris take on 2 enemies. On Maniac mode, Chris with +2 strength can one-round the soldier, who also doesn't quite 2-shot back, which is an important difference from Lunatic. On higher difficulties, Chris cannot take 2 hits from the soldier, who has perfect hit thanks to Lunatic giving enemies +10 hit, which forces Mercenary Chris to take an extra turn on this map there. Chris will be an important unit for basically the entire run, since one mid-game map forces him to be one of our long-term investment targets. On the first couple of maps, crits are completely disabled and player units cannot miss their attacks. As such, Chris needs the +1 speed in order to double Jagan to 2-turn this map. This is also why Merc Chris and Lunatic cannot simply take a bulk boost to 2-turn the map. There, only Fighter Chris can 2-turn it. Chris cannot grow magic and resistance as a mercenary, but has a greater than 100% HP growth. Prologue 2 has 2 enemies again, but we get an extra unit this time, Ryan. Ryan has high base defense but low speed and luck. He exists, a description which will be applicable to many people in the cast of this game. Ryan's personal bases are actually pretty low. He's mostly carried by the Archer class's high base defense. FE12 enemies prioritize expected damage in most situations, so they will prefer to attack Chris over Ryan on a fort. Chris 2-rounds both Luke and Roddy, and will dodge one of Luke's hits. On higher difficulties, we would want to roll down Luke and Roddy's skill to ensure they prefer to go for Chris over Ryan, since enemies will factor in crits into damage if they're at a rate of 2% or higher. I'm talking a lot about differences from Lunatic, partly because there's not that much to talk about when we have combat rigging. Chris will hit 14 skill with this level up, which is the highest skill benchmark in the entire run since almost all enemies have 0 luck in this game. That's Prologue 2 in 2 turns. Prologue 3 allows us to crit everyone except Sita, and we get 2 new units, Luke, the sword-flavored cav, and Roddy, the lance-flavored cav. Luke has better stats and will be our second long-term unit, as we need 1 combat unit with at least 7 move, which will obviously be Chris, and 1 with at least 8 move, for Prologue-8, and the second role will be fulfilled by Luke. For the sake of optimal EXP distribution, we roll up the central fighter's strength to ensure he will see a kill on Chris turn 1. Enemies will prioritize kills over expected damage. We shield Ryan because the mercenary will always see 2% crit on him, and have Luke equip a sword to ensure the merc sees more damage on him than Roddy, who would negate his +2 damage from weapon level thanks to weapon triangle. We also make sure to keep our other units out of Sita's range until Chris can be brought to critical HP. The forest gives Chris the ability to dodge Sita, while the critical HP ensures the remaining 2 enemies will go for him to vacuum up the EXP, completing Prologue 3 in 2 turns. At the end of the chapter we get a question. Answering yes takes us to Athena's version of Prologue 4, which is better for LTC, while answering no would have taken us to George's version. Prologue 4 is where Merc Chris distinguishes himself, as he can actually one-turn the map. This is also true on Lunatic, and is how he can catch up to Fighter Chris on that difficulty. Sita and Riss are the 2 new units who join us here. On Lunatic, if you go with Fighter Chris, Sita has to be trained in Prologue, since Chris doesn't have at least 7 move for Prologue 8, but we can pass on her. She will recruit multiple units later in the run, but we can get away with not training her. Riss exists. Playable units who show up as enemies in Prologue have their base luck stat, and Athena in particular has 6 luck, which makes her quite difficult to crit, necessitating at least 14 skill. With combat rigging we can sail through. At the end of this map we recruit Athena, who won't really do anything for us in the Prologue. If we had done George's version of the map, there would be more archers, and we would get Garden rather than George, making it worse for LTC. While the enemy phase plays out, I'd like to acknowledge XS for helping me with the planning of this run, and shout out DonDon151s and XS's FE12 LTC runs for serving as valuable reference. Prologue 5 is the first map that isn't just cramped. We have a relatively wide open space with lots of EXP bags to pump into Chris and Luke. I'll take this chance to talk a bit about our long-term goals. In Maniac mode, we ultimately want 4 physical long-term project units, aside from the star of this game, Marth of course, and one of those 4 has to be Chris due to chapter 16x, with Luke being the second due to the aforementioned Prologue-8. The other 2 physical project units we choose will join after the prologue, plus a certain pre-promote who will be a flunky for doing some jobs. Something you might notice is me skipping animations for critical hits. That's because crits burn a large number of extra RNs and DSFE, and if I'm not freezing the RNG for something, I typically don't want to deal with the crit RN burn. Similarly, text boxes of dialogue burn an RN for each phase that shows up in the conversation, and also periodically. Turn 2 sees Merrick join. While early game anima mages are my brand, Merrick will lead the party after the prologue and not rejoin until about a third of the way through Mart's campaign, so he's not going to be the primary mage of this run. On higher difficulties, he is a unit who has to be trained for the sake of a certain character recruitment at the end of the game, though we don't need to worry about that here. Still, I do have a fondness for the first anima mage from Shadow Dragon, and I hope you'll enjoy the few times he does get involved later in the run. Chris will kill the boss on enemy phase to conclude Prologue 5 in 2 turns. At the end of the chapter, we get asked a question. Answering yes takes us to the Draug version of Prologue 6, while no will take us to Ogma's map. We'll go to Ogma's version since it's easier to farm the EXP there. Prologue 6 gives us access to the preps menu and another tiny map. Classical one-turns of this map usually involve player face critting every single enemy, but since we have combat rigging and want to tighten up EXP, we will keep our filler units out of range and focus almost all the kills into Chris and Luke. Draug's version of the map has 2 enemies with access to 2 range, making it worse for EXP farming, though a Lunatic run would actually want to go there in order to feed EXP to Sida. The new unit who joined is Cecil, who brings us a fresh set of steel weaponry. The archer can't be enemy faced by Chris or Luke, so we place Merrick in a spot where he can draw out and enemy face him with his lowered bulk. At the end of the chapter, we get another question, this time to choose between Kane and Est's versions of Prologue 7. We don't particularly care about recruiting either of them for now, but Kane's map is easier for us to handle. That'll be Prologue 6 in 1 turn. Prologue 7 is titled Final Chest, but it's not the final map of the prologue. It has enough terrain to start making movement stats a bit of a consideration. We intentionally place Sida in that spot to bait the top archer over, while Chris will bait the left one down. The archer on the bottom we must kill with one of our irrelevant units. While we baited that archer with Sida so that Chris could kill him while being in range of Kane. Kane normally will not start moving until turn 3 unless he has been attacked, which is why we want Luke to get up in his face on turn 2 player phase. We'll complete the map in 2 turns. At the end of the chapter, Chris gets the chance to opt for a cosmetic change, Cecil's headband. We will take these just to vary up his appearance over the course of the run. Well, this is it, the grand finale of the prologue. Marth, the primary lord of this game, joins us at last. Marth and Chris are both game over units. Marth will of course be an important EXP target for the entire rest of the run. We will first clear out the way forward with Merrick and Marth, with Marth using the steel sword so he can crit kill barbs on enemy face, while Merrick was chosen for the ability to kill that enemy at 2 range while staying out of the range of the other enemies that are present on the map. We want to charge forward with a 7 or greater move unit on the right and an 8 or greater move unit on the left. These units will face the brunt of the enemies on turn 1 enemy phase. The enemies at the bottom, including the boss, have a linked AI where they will not charge you until you're in range of a certain number of them at once. On higher difficulties, there are a couple of extra thieves in their squad who can reach our 2 combat leads on turn 1 enemy phase, which would cause the boss's squad to start moving right away. We did have to roll the enemy stats appropriately to ensure that it was straightforward enough for me to rig Luke to dodge those attacks. On turn 2, Chris and Marth can clear out the mages while Luke charges up to the boss Katarina. Luke's and Chris's sword rank don't really end up mattering later in the run, as they'll eventually switch to using lances full time. A couple of thieves reinforce in on enemy face, and with combat rigging, we'll finish the map in 2 turns. See you next time.